Welcome to the development phase of the Strength and Power unit for the adult program. We're going to talk about today what our emphasis is on this phase, which is development. Development comes in strength. So we're going to talk about ways you can introduce strength into your program. Ideally, it comes with an external load, like a dumbbell or a barbell. But if you don't have that at home, we talk about how you can manipulate the exercise in terms of tempo to get the desired effect. So the exercise we're going to talk about today, the first one is a loaded squat. So ideally, if you have dumbbells at home, we'd like you to load the squat. A front squat is the first one. You're safe to use a bench here as well, just for a reference point of where you're sitting and how far back you need to go. But if you have dumbbells, this is a perfect way to set up. So dumbbells close to the shoulders, sitting back into the balls of the feet, into the heels of the foot. So that the weight distribution is towards the back of the foot, and you're sitting down nice and low. Use a bench or a chair, whatever it may be. Don't stand too close to the bench because it can allow you to maybe sit too far forward. Make sure there's a bit of a gap between you and the bench so you're sitting back onto those heels. If you're comfortable without the bench, just step forward and do your own weight and your own judgment of depth. So again, getting nice and low into that nice range position. You're looking for the thigh to hit parallel to the floor or a little bit below, and then come up. Okay, so that's one variation. The second variation is the goblet squat. If you just have one dumbbell or some weight and you feel comfortable with this, a lot of people like this because it allows you to get a good range through the movement. So again, using the bench as a reference point. If you don't need a bench, again, just step away. And again, the same rules apply here. We're just loading up nice and slowly and with good control and good range of the movement. So you step forward, sitting down as almost as low as you can, but nothing too far past parallel. Just maybe a little bit past it, but that is the reference point we're looking for. With the goblet squat, you're always looking for the weight to be very close to the center of mass or very close to your chest, and that then allows you to sit back to counterbalance the weight in front. The other way of doing it, if you don't have a dumbbell or a barbell, you can also use a barbell for the front squat, for instance. But if you don't have any weight at home, even a tin of beans might do. But if you don't have this, tempo is your other friend to get the adaptation we're looking for. So when I say tempo, I mean a slow eccentric, a slow downward phase of a 4-second count. So you're doing a 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a 1 up is the way we would like to load it. Ideally, we want some external load, but here is a nice way to do it. And again, use the bench as a reference. If you are comfortable without the bench, we would say remove yourself and just get that proprioception feedback of your own body in space and your own depth. So squatting down into that 1, 2, 3, 4 count, and then all the way up. In this phase, we've reduced the amount of exercise, so there's only 6 exercises in this, but we would like more of an emphasis on strength development. So make sure you're getting this, and it's only 8 repetitions. The repetitions come down, the exercises come down, but in contrast, we're going to increase the load on the movement. The next one is our slow eccentric squat. Okay, so we're going to use a bench, or you can, depending on the height here and what you're comfortable with, we're going to use a box here today to just show you how we want to do this. So it's a single leg movement, slow eccentric phase. So when it says eccentric, it just means the downward phase, right? It's where the muscle is lengthening. So going to squat down as low as you can with control and then come all the way back up. Now there's a few variations here with this. Again, tempo is our friend. We don't want to let gravity and just falling into the movement do the work. We want to slowly control our movement all the way down to the box. The repetition here again is 8. So again, slowly down. The variation here is if you struggle to come back up after going down into a squat, you can do it like this. So two feet on the floor and then step yourself up. So the emphasis here is on the downward phase. So single leg downward phase, and use 2 legs if you want to come up and stabilize yourself out of the movement. That's absolutely fine. And challenge yourself with the height of the box. I would think if there's a little bit of failure here in terms of you just fall into the box at the last couple of centimeters, that's absolutely fine. And you're challenging the nervous system to control a nice depth of movement. And depth is here where we get our load in. So as lower you can go, again to parallel, if you can get to that point, that's exactly where you want to be. We're just going to show you from a front on as well how it looks, just a little bit of variation. So if you want to go in the front of the box, and then this little squat. So some of the common errors here will be the hip flying out or the knee, uncontrollably going inward. There is going to be a little bit of knee valgus coming into this. There's going to be a little bit of, when I say knee valgus, the knee slightly coming in. And it's about like how much of this that you want to see. A little bit is okay as long as it's controlled, but if you see the knee flying in and the hip then flying out, then that's not what you want to see. So we're just going to show you a bad example here. So imagine you're into the squat and then fly your hip out. So if you're seeing this excessive hip going out to the side, then you might want to the height, increase the height of the box, and just make sure you've got good control on that movement. You just don't want to see, you don't want to load dysfunction. So just make sure you're getting a nice pattern of the knee relatively following over the toe, so there's not too much deviation inward, and the hip there's not too much deviation outward. So once you have that control, you have that alignment of the knee and hip and ankle, you're good to go, and just control that movement down as much as you can. 8 reps left and right. Again, take your time with this, right? Okay, and the next one then is the RDL. So again, like all these exercises, or many of them, we want you to load them up if you can. If you have dumbbells at home, feel free to use dumbbells here. If you have a barbell, if you're lucky enough to have a barbell, use a barbell, and we'll show you different variations, but the principles are the same. Okay, so with dumbbells, the setup again, so we look, the feet are forward, they're about hip width apart, and you're getting into that nice position. So she's going to show you here how to get into the nice position. Basically, the bar or the dumbbells are following the line of the thigh, so they're getting very close to the body. What happens too often here is the weights come out too far. If you just do a bad example again of the weights coming out too far in front, now you've got all this fulcrum at the spine, at the lumbar spine. So you got too much weight and you got too much torque at the back of the spine, which can cause a lot of issues. So it's very important here that we keep the dumbbells close to the thighs and down to the shins. So your depth here is around knee height, depending on your arm length, of course, but maybe a little bit past knee height. You want the back almost to get close enough to parallel to the floor. You see in a good position here with the posture. A good thing here to look at is just tightening up around the scapula before you get into the movement. So good, nice control down towards the knees, mid-shin. Some people have a long length of the hamstrings. Just the things to look for here is if the back doesn't cave in and if the weight isn't going far forward. So if you can get to a nice good range here, which is about mid-shin in this example, and the back's in a good position, that's a good load, and that's a good stretch of the hamstrings, and that's what we want to see. So just give an example of the dowel, or if you have a broomstick at home, something here we can use. And it's just the same principles again that apply. So you can grip the barbell or the brush and just make sure you tighten up around here before you start a movement. And then, so you see here as well, the knees are slightly bent. What we say is they're soft knees. They're not excessively bent as in they're coming forward. There's just a slight bend on the knees to take a bit of load off the tendon of the hamstring and getting that belly engaged in the movement. So again, there's a nice good range here. There's good tightness. And there's just also one thing, when you come back up, just come back all the way tall. So fully extend the hips. All right. We don't want to encourage flexion on the start of every movement. There is a little bit of start, but when you come up, you get into hip extension. We don't want to encourage flexion all the time. That's quite a common problem with a lot of athletes, that extension of the hip, and sometimes we encourage bad extension by staying in flexion on exercises. So make sure you fully come all the way up. Perfect. That's good. Okay, and the next one then, again, like the same principles apply. We did a double leg exercise, we did a single leg exercise, and then we did a posterior chain, and there's a second posterior chain here, and we're talking here about, this is more proximal hamstring, so high up in the hamstrings, and we're now going slightly into more distal, so at the knee of the hamstrings, if you like. So it's into a glute bridge again. So you come all the way up into a glute bridge. Again, you would have done this a few times, but it's a bit of variation of the same exercise. You're going to walk out to where you feel quite comfortable, and you're going to march on that spot. So you're going to bring up one leg and then lower one leg, and then just alternate. So you'll do 8 each side. So the important point here is just keep the hip in extension when you do this. Keep good control of the pelvis. If you feel the pelvis is rotating left and right or dropping too much, just reset yourself, take a breather, and then come up. It's all about quality, even though it's developmental and we're trying to load and trying to get some stimulus through the muscle. It's important that the movement is always consistent and proper in each exercise. Okay, so there are your 2 posterior chain exercises for this phase. Then we're going on to our plyometrics, or our jumping and landing. So the 2 exercises that we chose today, the first one is a sort of a multi-plane movement. So we're going to challenge the exercise of pogo hops again. Pogo hops are a very good exercise to get used to, because they are the predecessor of good acceleration mechanics. Okay, so we're going to challenge it a bit today. Now, sometimes when you challenge the movement, it breaks down a little bit, so just make sure you're conscious that there is good movement. And with the pogo hops, we're always looking for that nice toe up, minimize contact on the floor, and good height. So we're going to go into a bit of a cross, or if you want a clock, whatever analogy you want to use. You're stood in the middle of a clock or in the middle of a cross. You're going to jump forward, back to the middle, back to the left, and then back to the middle, back to the right, and then behind you and back in again. So imagine it's 0, you're in the middle of the clock, you're going to 12, back to the middle, out to 9 or 3, and then so on, and then you go back again to 6 and back to the middle. So you're going to do 2 of those crosses. Now it's very important here that you try and get the coordination right, and the timing of plyometrics is so important. The analogy I like to use with plyometrics, yes, it is about the force you apply, which is going to be the height you generate, and how quickly you apply that force, which is going to be about the time of contact in the floor. But also there is a huge element of timing, getting the technique right. So it's like striking a football or striking a sliotar. Sometimes you go massive force in behind it and it doesn't go as far. Sometimes you hit it just on a sweet spot and it can travel much further with less force, and it's just that timing of plyometrics is really important. So don't get carried away with how much force and all that. If the timing on the floor is starting to increase, and also if the timing of your contractions of the muscle isn't there yet. So make sure this is a very coordinated approach, and feel how it's feeling in you. So if you feel like this is I'm getting good force, I'm generating good time on the floor or less time on the floor, then that's about right. So there is a feel to plyometrics that needs to be considered. Okay, onto the lateral hop then. So we're going to do a bit of frontal plane motion, and this is what development phase is going to do. It's going to try and emphasize a lot more on multi-directional plane. We've already introduced that, but this one's a very frontal plane motion. So there's 2 ways of doing this. We can go right onto left, so if you can load onto the right leg and jump onto the left. So that's one way, and we'll go back the other way, so it's going to go right, 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 right. So we're just going to go one leg or left, left, whatever you want to do. So one leg only, or right onto left, whatever you want to do. So this is one leg only. Hopping and sticking is the movement, so lateral hop and stick. Now what's important here is, and where this comes into your sport, is you want to be powerful, moving left and right, maybe to go a shot on goal or getting away from your opponent. So it's important here that we're not hopping up and down, as in like we're getting high force in the vertical phase, or vertical direction. We're looking for horizontal displacement as much as we can. So the hip is like sliding across is what we're looking for here. So we're trying to produce as much force laterally as we possibly can. And the low clearance of the floor is what we're looking for. We don't want that leg to come all the way up and then land, or the hip to come all the way up and land. We want a little bit of force in the vertical phase, but more so across the horizontal is what we're looking for here. So we'll do that one again. So you go right and left. So this is one option. That's the easy one. And if you feel you're good and strong and generate just on one leg, you can generate that force coming across. Okay, so it's up to you on where you want to pitch this. And again, like all the exercises, we've shown you a bit of variations. Just at home, when you are doing these exercises, just make sure you select it that's right for you. The most important thing is good movement. Then if we can load it up slightly, it's a good thing for this phase. And we're going to slightly introduce more load and try and drive that strength adaptation. So those are exercises for your phase and for this block. Hope you enjoy it, and good luck at home trying these.